is up, guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're gonna be going over 5 mid tips. So these are tips for mid laners if you didn't get that based on my last sentence. But yeah, I want to go over some tips for the mid lane. Basically, we did this for a couple of the other roles. I think I did it. God, I'm forgetting. I think I did it for 5. I don't think I did it for position 4. Did I do it for safe lane? Damn, I can't remember. Either way, if I didn't do it for the role that you want, comment it down below, right? I've been having a really good time making these videos and I think they're extremely useful. Like, the big thing for me about these videos is even if you can't directly apply the tip right away, it kind of just gets you in the right headspace of like, oh yeah, when I play ranked, I need to actually focus on different ideas and certain concepts. Otherwise, I'll get stuck on my bracket for the next 7 years. Because that's what happens to a lot of people. And it might even be you, you know? You've maybe been 3K for 5 years or, you know, hovering in the same like 500 MMR span for years now. And you know, if you don't have different ideas and you get stuck in your current ideas and blame other people, you're screwed. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally with the Game Leap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the Game Leap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below. I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. All right, let's get into point number 1. And that is stop over-rotating, especially on heroes that can't. So a big thing for me about the mid lane is you're going to get off to a good start. And that's really important to note. Yes, you can rotate when you're level 4 and 5, and there's situations in which it's good. For instance, if you're playing something like, let's say, an active hero like Tusk, and you get a haste rune, okay? You know, the enemy team is pushed up, right? They're close to your tier 1 tower. You're probably going to be able to get behind them with that haste rune. They're not going to be able to disengage because they're near your tier 1, and that is probably going to be an effective kill, and maybe not even cost you too many resources because you're going to have bottle charges to basically heal yourself up, right? So there's times, but oh my gosh, often people will just rotate with no vision at all. And I don't mean Dota vision, I mean a vision of like, what is supposed to happen and why am I doing this? They just show up to a lane because they're like, yup, the mid laner's supposed to gank. And that is all that's behind it. Now, I can't talk about every situation right now, but think about your hero's timing. If I'm playing something like Tusk, guys, think about it. If I am playing a hero like Tuskar, what in the world should I be doing in the game? Should I be looking to get active or primarily farm? Probably get active. However, where people go too far is they'll answer that question correctly. It's like, okay, if I'm playing Tusk mid or Pangolier mid or Void Spirit mid, these like very active heroes that do a lot of damage at level 6, right? They'll get that right. But then that's all that they think about. And they forget to shove the mid wave. They'll miss multiple mid waves. And it's insane to me because you're missing creep wave after creep wave after creep wave, and then your mid tower falls pretty early on into the game. It takes half health from like nearly creeps alone and a couple of tower hits from the enemy hero, and it's just awful gameplay. You need to defend your mid tower, and you need to make sure you're snowballing your game at least to a certain extent. And this is very, very important. And then the second half to this point that I want to make when it comes to, you know, stopping over-rotating, especially on heroes that can't, is that's the last part of that sentence, which is heroes that can't. People will expect, and I see this all the time, they're like wanting their sniper mid when he's level 6 to just instantly rotate. Now you might be thinking, oh, but he has Assassinate and Shrapnel. And yes, this is true. And if the enemy team heinously overextends, a sniper mid rotation can be very effective, no doubt, right? No doubt. But a lot of the time, it's just not going to play out very well, right? Because the shrapnels, it's not an insane slow. Let me give an even a better example. Something like Shadow Fiend mid. Okay, this hero's raise is now slow, so the hero's better than ever at rotating. However, if Shadow Fiend doesn't dominate his lane, and there's another hero, another mid hero, let's say it's an Ember Spirit. For some reason, he didn't win his lane, or he only slightly beat him. That Ember Spirit is going to be able to counter gank potentially very easily if you don't get a good angle. And that Shadow Fiend might try to gank like a Morphling, who can easily shift and avoid the gank unless he somehow catches him off guard. You get the point, right? These players will be playing a greedy hero that needs to shove out the mid lane. They won't shove out the mid lane. They'll have no bottle charges, and they just grief their game. So please be careful about that. Make sure you clear mid wave constantly from minute 0 to minute like 13, 14. Often the mid laner should be clearing the wave and then rotating. It's very important to do this to make sure you're reliably snowballing. Point number 2. So number 2 is very important to me because it's an easy fix that drastically is going to change your game. One example I'd like to talk about is, let's say, the Lina Leshrac matchup. Very often in this matchup, you'll see both the Lina and the Leshrac in very high skill games pick up a stick after the bottle. So the most common build would be 3 branches, tangos, fairy fire. And then after the fairy fire, they're going to go for the bottle. After bottle, they'll pick up a stick. And this is key because when the traits are going to be very close, for instance, in the Lina Leshrac matchup, it can be it's a little bit Lina favored typically, but you know, the Lesh can do a good job if he hits some good stuns, he can turn it around. But either way, if you don't have this stick, you're not going to be able to use your spells nearly as much, and you're likely going to get kicked out of lane by someone who does buy this very efficient item. And this is the case for a ton of matchups, right? Let's say you're playing Tusk against Ember. Both heroes should probably buy a stick, because if you're trading 1-for-1 and you're constantly spamming nukes to secure the range creep or creeps in general, you're gonna need the mana. And so please buy that item. And then and most importantly, even if you don't buy it, maybe you're playing something like Sniper mid, right, who doesn't necessarily have to buy it, or you're playing Shadow Fiend and you want to just get that bottle and then spam by a couple mangoes to really make sure you can spam races as early as you can, like that's fine. But then if you're gonna get active mid game, guys, you have to, and it's not just wand. You have to buy wand. Most importantly, you have to buy a wand. It is the best early game fighting item in the game. If you are the type of mid player who says, I'm snowballing, I don't need it, you are being foolish. This item is completely OP because one of the big things about being active on the map is keeping your resources up. Even if you're snowballing and you're strong, you're still going to take damage. You're still going to have to use a ton of mana. This is inevitable. It's 450 gold for the best healing item in the game by a long shot, outside of like bottle if you get a ton of runes, you know what I mean? So, and it's burst and it can't be canceled. It's completely broken. After that is raindrops. If you're playing something like Pangolier mid and you go brown boots or into mana boots into diffusal blade, even if you get that diffusal blade really early, which can be fine some games, you better be primarily just shoving mid and then looking for very safe ganks if you're going to do that. Because if you go mana boots into diffusal, which I literally saw a top like rank 300 player do in my game recently, even though, and this is why I thought it was so stupid, there's reason behind it, because diffusal is so good on Pango, right? But the reason why it's risky is if you get caught out at all, right? So if they have slight Pango counters, which we did when we were against him, you have 920 HP, I think the guy had. And he was level like 10 or something. I mean, maybe not 10, maybe it's like 8. You get the point, right? He was some pretty decent high level, but no health, no burst healing, no raindrops. If you buy 1 raindrops on Pango, that's usually going to be about 400 to 500 extra health in that fight. Do you think that's going to keep you alive, guys? Of course it's going to keep you alive. And it's going to give you the mana regen you need desperately to keep fighting. Desperately to keep fighting. So, and this is a big thing as well that I was about to say and I forgot to say. He had 2 greedy side laners. I can't remember the exact heroes, but I remember because I was watching the replay. He had 2 greedy side laners. 2 heroes that can carry the game. They can make the space. I mean, they can carry the game. He needs to make the space. He could have done that. He could have taken that role. He could have been that guy. You know what I mean? He could have been the guy who bought the wand, bought the raindrops, bought corrosion, bought mana boots, and moved around the map. He could have been that guy. I think he should have been that guy. Because the side lanes didn't do too great, and he was just farming mid for 13 minutes because he's afraid of dying. And if he team fights, he can die to like 2 nukes plus a couple autos, you know what I mean? Like 2 heroes plus some autos. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Please, if you're playing tempo, buy those items. Spam 1v1s mid is the 3rd point. I can't stress this enough. I think it's less important, honestly, for the side lanes, even though it's really useful to play 2v2s and 1v1s for every role. I genuinely believe for mid lane, it's just too important. The mid lane, ever since there's been no small camp, there's no pole camp, there's no side pole, wave dragging, your one-on-one mechanics and creep aggro can't be abused nearly as much mid as it can in the side lanes. Like, you can creep aggro way more and do like more creep aggro tricks in the side lanes because of the fact that there's more lane and the towers don't insta-kill your creeps if you pull creep aggro twice. You know what I mean? So you have to spam 1v1s mid. Being a good technical mid player is so damn important, it's insane. Because getting off to a good start means you're going to be able to gank the side lanes first. That's going to open up the game for, let's say, your Visage. Then that Visage hits an earlier 6 as a result because you could gank because you won your lane, right? You could contest the rune better because you hit level 6 first. So you get the 6-minute rune. You know what I mean? You get the 6-minute rune because you're a good laner. Now you can kill mid because you have that rune. You take the mid tower maybe because you have that rune. You get a kill in the jungle. You can rotate to a side lane. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's too much riding on having a good lane when it comes to the mid lane. I mean, and you might be like, oh, doesn't this apply to every role? Of course it does. As I said, it does. But the mid lane is just, there's a lot of repetition in the mid lane. Like, there's less variables, I would say. There's still a lot to think about, right? But it's more of like a mechanical game of pulling creep aggro at the right time, understanding your matchup, using the tower HP regen, nuking at the right time, right? Et cetera, et cetera. If you master these things, and trust me, if you think you're good at mid, you could be way better, I assure you. Watch high-level mid-laning gameplay and then try to 1v1 your friend, 1v1 someone. please. It will make you way better as a mid player in particular. Coming in number 4, you want to study early game rotations and mid game rotations, and especially the regen management of pro players. One of the hardest things about the mid lane role is when you're ganking side lanes like crazy and you're also trying to farm yourself, it's going to cause you to use a ton of mana. So one of the things I always recommend to some of my mid lane students is that they really pay a very close attention to how many clarities they buy, when they pick up runes, when they pick up the bounty rune, the water rune, the power runes, how they manage all these things and how they synergize picking up runes and buying clarities around their ganks, because you want to be popping clarities and bottle charges in between the ganks and in between farming. So it's very important to do this, and you want to learn how how regen management should play into your rotations. If you don't base your rotations at least somewhat or largely on how much resources you have, you are being insane. You have to, right? If you gank bottom with half HP, half mana with no bottle charges, even if you win the fight, you're going to come out of that fight with no resources. You're not going to be able to show your face mid. You better pray to gosh you can get the bounty rune into the power rune, and it's going to ruin your game. So if you're in that scenario, what do you think you should do? Maybe you should go back to base if there's no power rune coming up. If there's a power rune coming up, you should probably contest the power rune, try to get it and get your resources up, then gank. Maybe you should look for a bounty rune. You get what I'm saying? And then when you make these plays to pick up a bounty rune, you can say, oh, maybe I can stack off of it. Maybe I can farm a cam quickly if I'm playing like Lina or something, right? Maybe I can rotate to a side lane. It's the Thompson Primal Beast Classic. You guys remember in TI Quals? If you watch his games, Thompson, one of the best mid lane players of our day and age, would pick up the bounty and then immediately go gank a side lane because he was already close. And he would have bottle charges to make sure he had enough mana. You know what I mean? And he could pop a clarity on the way back if he had one. So you get the point. You need these things to line up, and you should watch. Obviously, I can make a full video on this topic, no joke. I can make a 20, 30, 40-minute video on that if I really wanted to, you know? So just keep it in mind. All right, and finally, the last thing, and I learned this a lot when I was playing mid for one of the seasons of the DPC very briefly. Man, I was not the greatest, I will not lie to you. I had so much to learn, but basically one of the big things that I did learn is contesting and calling for rune help is so important. Let's say, I'm going to use this example. I like this example a lot. Ember Pangolier. This is a cool matchup because they fight quite a bit, they skirmish quite a bit. Ember is slightly favored or favored by a bit, so it's a tough matchup, right? Definitely a bit of a tough matchup. Now, why do I say this? So it's a bit of a tough matchup. However, it becomes brutally difficult for Pango in particular if he can't get runes. So if you're training very aggressively, you're poking him with Flame Guard, you're poking the Pangolier with Sleight of Fist, you're poking this guy down. Okay, he gets his bottle. The clock is 3:30. Okay. The Pango is out of bottle charges. He's out and he's half HP, half mana. A pretty common scenario, believe it or not. Very common scenario. If you play the lane aggressive, this can happen. This definitely can happen. It particularly happens at like minute 5:30, coming up to the power runes. If your support can contest one of the runes, or you can take both of the runes away from the Pango, maybe by using your remnants, or by, I don't know, maybe he's stupid and just doesn't go for the rune fast enough, which literally can happen. But the biggest thing is having the awareness. You are a top level mid player if you can say, my support taking the bottom water rune and then me taking the top water rune wins us the lane and potentially the game. That is a brutally impactful play and bit of knowledge you need to implement when you can. If you are low on bottle resources or bottle charges, and you need the rune, you can also, and you're losing the lane, it's a hard lane, right? Maybe you're playing Penguin and Kunkka, something like that, right? Penguin to Ember. And you need the rune, you can also ask for help in that regard. Only if the lane is like even-ish, and you're chilling, you're just gonna trade runes, then you don't probably need any help, and it'd be a waste of time for them to come over most of the time. You know what I mean? You have to understand the differences, and you have to understand how it affects your opponent's gameplay if they cannot get a rune. Most mid laners cannot play the lane if they're a bottle hero in a pretty pokey lane and they don't get a rune. You can't play. And all right, that's going to be all for the mid tips. I really wanted to end on that one because I think it's important. Pretty, you can definitely apply a lot of those ideas very, very quickly. And yeah, best of luck in your games. I wish you all many, many plus 30s, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. And that's all. But remember, before you leave, before you tune out, subscribe to the Game Leap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.